Hey guys, my name is Catherine. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Missing the Missing. In this episode, number 18, we're going to be talking about Emanuela Orlandi. Much like the last episode, I do apologise. A lot of the source material is in Italian, which is not my first language, so I have relied heavily on the use of translators for this, though I have tried to verify and corroborate information wherever possible. So please bear with me, and with that said, let's begin. Emanuela Orlandi was born on the 14th of January 1968 and lived with her family in the Vatican City. The Vatican City is the smallest sovereign state in the world, being just 49 hectares or 120 acres, with a population today of only 825. It is governed by the Holy See, or the Pope, and is situated completely within and surrounded by the city of Rome in Italy. Emanuela was the fourth of 5 children to their parents Ercole and Maria Orlandi, along with her siblings, older brother Pietro and sisters Natalina, Federica and Maria Cristina. Their grandfather was a commesso, a clerk in the Vatican, with their father Ercole following in his footsteps, also working for the Vatican. Varying sources place him as either a Vatican banker, a teacher or a police officer, though the majority seem to agree that he was in fact a commesso, a clerk himself, who organised papal audiences. Either way, the family lived in an apartment in the tight-knit community within the boundaries of the Vatican City, where they had free use of the 23 hectares or 57 acres that make up the Vatican Gardens. The children went to school at a Liceo Scientifico High School in the Vittorio Emanuele II National Boarding School in the Piazza Monte Grappa in Rome. The school year began in September and ended in June. Emanuela had just finished her second year with less than remarkable grades in Latin and French. Despite this, she continued to take flute and choral singing lessons 2 to 3 times a week, at least on a Wednesday and a Friday, at the Tommaso Ludovico de Vittoria School of Music. Emanuela allegedly had a crush on a 19-year-old young man named Alberto Laurenti, who played the guitar there. She was a keen musician, also playing the piano and being part of the choir of the Church of Sant'Anna de Palafrenieri in the Vatican. Usually her father or brother would take her for these lessons, otherwise she would use public transport. Emanuela was carefree and punctual, never nervous. She also had a lot of moles on her back. The sports team she followed was Rome, whose colours she would frequently wear. She was also supposed to wear glasses, but didn't like to do so, and often didn't because of their white frames. The children had a happy childhood. She had a close relationship with her brother Pietro. He remembers, "We both liked music. She was trying to teach me a Chopin piece. We only got through 2 pages. The Vatican Gardens were available to us as if it was our own back garden. Pope John Paul II would pause to talk to the children. Pietro remembered, we felt we were in the safest place in the world. But sadly, it would be anything but safe for the family in the summer of 1983. At the time of her disappearance, Emanuela was described as a 15-year-old Italian female, between 150 to 160 centimetres, or 4'11" to 5'3" tall, with long, straight, dark hair and brown eyes. She has a slim build and was last seen wearing gym shoes or trainers, jeans with suspender braces, and a white shirt or blouse. She had a yellow and red fabric necklace on and was carrying a brown leather bag which contained her flute in a black rectangular case. The bag also contained some sheet music, her school enrolment card, and her public transport card. Wednesday the 22nd of June 1983 was a sunny day. Emanuela's parents left in the morning to go to Fiumicino to see relatives while the children remained at home. At 4:30 p.m, Emanuela left her family's apartment to go to her flute lesson at her music school in Rome, which was due to take place between 5 and 7 p.m. The class was so long because it also contained a group singing lesson with Monsignor Valentino Miserax. Emanuela had asked her brother Pietro if he would accompany her on the bus to the class that day, but he declined, citing other commitments, something which he would go on to regret. They'd had a typical sibling argument, and Emanuela left to walk to the bus stop, slamming the door behind her. Emanuela boarded the number 64 bus at the nearby stop and exited 4 stops later at the Ludovico de Vittoria Institute in Piazza Sant'Andrea del Vel, as usual. Typically, she would then walk the remaining 200 or so metres, or about 650 feet, down Corso Rinascimento to class, which was about a mile from her home across the River Tiber. She walked along the right side of the pavement, passing the Senate building. Just minutes' walk away, in the Piazza Navona, a public space, that evening there was a demonstration by the Organised Unemployment Committee. The highlight of the event was a free-entry reggae concert held by a Jamaican group called Clint Eastwood and General Saint. And just minutes' walk more, in Piazza del Pantheon, there was a demonstration from 6 p.m. organised by the PCI entitled Rome to Where, debating archaeological problems, conservation, information, music and entertainment. The general location would therefore have been very, very busy on that particular evening. At some point along her route, she was interrupted by a stranger who approached her and offered her a job selling Avon cosmetics. Emanuela was conflicted about this and couldn't decide what to do. The male told her he would wait for her after she finished her music lesson to see if she would accept the job offer. The delay caused her to arrive 15 minutes late for her class, which had by this time already begun. During the lesson, she appeared distracted. Despite being late for the lesson, Emanuela asked her teacher, Loriana Berti, if she could finish early, and so, at about 6:45 p.m, she left the lesson, confiding in her friend Sabrina Caliti about the job offer. At around the same time, Emanuela telephoned home from the payphone within the building, intending to speak with her mother about the job offer, but her sister Federica answered and said that their mother was unavailable. Emanuela explains to her sister, while I was going to school in Corso Rinascimento, in front of the Senate, I was stopped by a gentleman who offered me a job to distribute Avon products with other girls during the Fontana Sisters Parade to be held in Palazzo Borromini on Saturday. I will take almost 400,000 lira. He is a kind gentleman. There is no need to worry. He said to ask Mum for permission and give him an answer tonight. He is waiting for me when I leave school to see if Mama gives me permission or not. I'm not sure the reason for the haste, as the job was not due to start until the Saturday of the following week, but never mind. Federica was a bit older than her sister and had previously worked for Avon Cosmetics. So hearing the amount of money that had been offered, she immediately became suspicious, telling Emanuela to forget about it and to come home straight away. Emanuela, though, was excited by the prospect, and so Federica told her to at least seek permission from their mother before committing herself. The phone call ends at 6:50 p.m, and Emanuela left the institute with her friend Raffaella Monzi, with whom she walked back to the same bus stop. Raffaella remembered, we had just come out of the choral singing lesson. Emanuela confided to me that they had offered her to distribute products for a cosmetic house at a fashion show. They had promised her 375,000 lira. She was tickled by the idea of making money, but was unsure whether to accept. She told me, the person who offered me the job wants an answer tonight. Am I waiting, or am I going home? By now it was 7:20. My bus had arrived, and I said goodbye. I don't know what to tell you, Emanuela. Raffaella and other students boarded the busy bus. Emanuela didn't, and as they set off, Raffaella and others, including Maria Grazia Cassini, saw Emanuela being joined by another individual. Sometime after this, Emanuela was due to meet her sister Maria Cristina outside of the Tribune della Cassazione, or the Court of Cassation / Palace of Justice. This is the highest court of appeal, or the court of last resort in Italy, which advises on the correct application of law and resolves jurisdictional issues amongst courts. I'm not sure if Emanuela or Christina's appointment was specifically at the court, or if it was a meeting place from where they would travel on, but Emanuela didn't show up. Varying reports place Emanuela both near to a green BMW, which contained an Avon satchel, and also getting into a large dark-coloured or black BMW. Christina, concerned by Emanuela's absence from the pre-arranged meeting, along with some of her friends, called the music school, from which they learned that Emanuela had left the premises a while ago. At about 8:30 p.m, when Christina returns home with the news that she couldn't locate Emanuela, the family grew worried. Her father explained. At that time, public transport went a little bit in fits and starts. Strikes were going on, and we thought Emanuela was on foot. So my son Pietro and I decided to meet her, I on foot and he on the bike. They also considered the possibility that Emanuela had remained behind at the school for longer than expected due to the upcoming end-of-year tests that were due the following week. But there was no trace of Emanuela. Ercole continued. I left home at 10 p.m. on foot with my wife, Maria, and headed for the Music Institute. My son went to the school on a motorbike, a Suzuki 550. Meanwhile, Natalina and Federica began calling the local hospitals, relatives, friends, parents of friends, and also to Sister Dolores, who was a central figure at the music school. When Ercole and Maria arrived at the institute, the lights were off and nobody answered their knocks at the door. The family became more frantic and desperate until after a while, a professor from the Oriental Languages Institute, also based in the building, appeared at a window confirming that there was nobody else inside and that he had seen the children leave at around 7 p.m. Despite this fact, the institute opened for us and let us in. It was pitch dark inside and nobody was there. Ercole and Pietro decided to file a missing report at the Trevi police station in Piazza del Collegio Romano, though sadly, as is typical in these cases, certainly historically, the police had recommended waiting a while, that a few hours was not yet cause for concern, and suggested that perhaps the girl was with friends. Beyond this, it was alleged that officers told the family that they would have to report the disappearance to the Vatican's General Inspectorate of Public Security, being Vatican citizens. Even so, that same evening, friends of the family searched up to the park of Villa Borghese, but there was no sign of Emanuela, who was officially reported as missing to the Vatican Inspectorate by Ercole and Natalina at 7:50 a.m. the following morning. From that day, said her brother Pietro with a heavy heart and a conflicted conscience, my family entered into this nightmare. The case was, for lack of better terms, sensational and scandalous at the time, with huge interest from everywhere. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano would claim that between 8 and 9 p.m. on the 22nd of June, that being before the incident had been reported by the family and unbeknown to the family, a stranger would call the Vatican urgently requesting to speak with the Secretary of State, Agostino Casaroli, of an important matter. At the time, however, Casaroli is in Poland on an official papal visit with Pope John Paul II. It is thought that the sisters on duty at the switchboard believed the call to be a hoax and transferred it through to the press room. Those who conversed with the unidentified caller are shocked when the message comes through loud and clear. Emanuela has been kidnapped. At the time of the call, Emanuela had not yet been reported as missing, and so the call was written off as a bad joke in poor taste. Others would go even further, to state that this whole report was farcical and never actually happened. In a subsequent interview as late as 2019, the Archbishop would explain that he may have made a mistake, and that the telephone call, which was followed up by a fax, may have been received on the 23rd of June, the day after the disappearance, not before it. Either way, as we now know, something sinister did indeed happen to Emanuela on the 22nd of June 1983 in Rome. The Pope was notified of the disappearance as he flew back from Krakow, Poland, and Monsignor Casaroli, the Secretary of State, called an urgent meeting on the matter. It had been suspected for a while that another attempt would be made against the Pope or the Vatican, and it was not known if the vanishing was related at this time. A search was commenced in Rome later that day, following the path Emanuela would have taken to go to her music school. The family spoke with local shopkeepers and even approached the Senate to view their security footage, though frustratingly, the cameras were not in operation at the time of the disappearance. It was, however, established that 2 police officers were on duty at 5 p.m. the previous day, Alfredo Sambuco and Bruno Bosco. They had seen a girl matching Emanuela's description near the 70 stop of Corso Rinascimento, which would have been along her route to class. Corresponding with other eyewitness accounts, they saw her talking to a man who was standing next to an old black-coloured BMW with a light green roof. The man was seen showing the girl some cosmetics that he removed from an Avon bag. Sambuco, who had often patrolled the front of the Senate, would say, "I knew her by sight because I saw her pass every day. That Wednesday, I saw her near a green BMW parked in a stop in front of the Senate. I approached because the car was not allowed to park there. The man assured me that he would leave immediately, and he did." Bosco later submitted a report to his supervisors, confirming, quote, "The stranger standing near the old-fashioned light green BMW near the house number 3 in Piazza Madama was talking to a girl, at the same time showing a military-style haversack with Avon writing, probably containing cosmetic products." Between the two officers' accounts, a description of the male was created. He was described as approximately 35 to 45 years of age, of a dark complexion with short, sparse or receding brown hair. He was well dressed in a light-coloured shirt and trousers. He was about 175 to 180 centimetres tall, or 5'9" to 5'11" inches, with a slim to normal build and an elongated face. Bosco would go on to describe the girl, and later confirm her identity by quoting, "I have no doubt that it is precisely Emanuela Orlandi, because that girl had already been noticed by me more than once in the area of Piazza Madama, Corso Rinascimento, and because it was extremely easy for me to recognise her when her photograph had appeared in the newspapers. Only on this occasion did I have the opportunity to learn that the girl identified with Emanuela Orlandi." At 3 p.m. on the 23rd of June, her parents called the director of the music school to ask if any of her classmates knew any information. The same afternoon, Emanuela's maternal uncle, Mario Meneguzzi, attends various media outlets requesting that they feature Emanuela's story. On Friday, the 24th of June, newspapers began printing the case, publishing with it the Orlandi family's telephone number. On Friday, the 24th of June, Pietro, his cousins and his friends meet on their motorbikes at the top of Viale Cristoforo Colombo to go to Ostia, where Emanuela and her mother would often visit. Ostia is about 35 kilometres or 22 miles from Vatican City. It is a commune of Rome near the ancient port and is the only district of Rome on the Tyrrhenian Sea, where many city dwellers spend their summer holidays. They searched the promenade, the beach, the terminus of the Rome-Lido train, the seaplane ladder, the pine forest of Castelfusano, all roads, and the sand dunes of Torva Janica, but sadly there were no leads. The next day at 6 p.m, a youth claiming to be a 16-year-old Pierluigi called the Orlandis, stating that his 14-year-old fiancée and a friend of hers had seen Emanuela that day. Some sources state that the sighting was at Piazza Navona and others that it was Piazza Campo della Fiori. They are just 300 metres apart. One of the two girls said her name was either Barbara or Barbarella, and she had a flute with her and was selling trinkets, skirts and Avon cosmetics. She had just had a haircut and said that she had run away from home. He explained, "My fiancé suggested to Barbara to earn something by playing the flute in Piazza Navona, but Barbara replied that she was ashamed to perform in public because to read the score sheet she would have to put on a pair of glasses with a white frame that made it ugly." 3 hours later he called back, remembering, Barbara had said she was suffering from one-eyed astigmatism, so she should have brought her teardrop glasses. There were elements of truth to Pierluigi's account, details that had not been at that point in the public domain. For example, the Avon link, and about her eyes and glasses, with the right detail about the frame colour. The family were convinced that he had actually seen Emanuela. The next day, Emanuela's siblings, cousins and friends take to the streets of Rome and through Piazza Campo del Fiori and Piazza Navona, while at home at 8 p.m. the phone rang again for the Orlandi family. Again, it was Pierluigi. He said that Barbara said she was 16 and someone had asked if Barbara would play the flute for their sister's wedding. Mario Meneguzzi, Emanuela's uncle, suggested a meeting in the Vatican, which seemed to surprise Pierluigi, who questions, "In the Vatican? Are you a priest?" Thinking about it, Mario didn't believe that the voice sounded like that of a teenager. Now, before we move on, it's important to briefly outline the law enforcement situation in Italy. Effectively, there are three main police forces in the country, amongst other smaller localised agencies with limited powers. The main three are the Carabinieri, the National Gendarmerie, and the Polizia di Stato, or the Civil National Police. According to Wikipedia, the latter deal with financial, drug and smuggling offences. The Carabinieri are the military police for the Italian armed forces, having nationwide remit for crime investigations, and can be called up for national defence as well, while the Gendarmerie has general policing duties throughout the civilian population. So, continuing. Later that same night, nearing midnight of the 26th into the 27th of June, a strange event occurred. The Gendarmerie on guard at Porta Sant'Anna encountered two agents of the Italian intelligence service, Mario Omorino Vulpiani and Agilo Gangi. Quote, "They told me that they were from the service and that they were investigating the white slave trade," said Ercole, Emanuela's father. Vulpiani said that he was from Turano, the little village of our summer holidays. He continued, and Gangi added that he too visited Turano. This coincidence impressed me a great deal, but there was no reason to suspect. Nevertheless, Gangi did not tell me that he had met Emanuela, nor that he was well acquainted with my niece Monica. It was only when Gangi was recognised in a random encounter by Ercole's son-in-law, Mario, that he became aware of the acquaintance. The agents fitted a recording and wiretapping device to the Orlandi's home phone and searched through Emanuela's room, documenting their findings, which included her diaries. "If they took something, I don't know," said Ercole. "Obviously I trusted them, and we had something very different in our minds at that time." At some point, a male by the name Gianfranco Gramendola introduced himself to the Orlandi family as a carabiniere and Gangi's boss, asking to be called by his codename Leone. It would later be discovered that he was also a secret agent of the intelligence service. At 7 p.m. on either the 27th of June or the 28th, another male, claiming to be named Mario, 35 years old, and who spoke with a Roma accent, contacted the Orlandis. He claimed that he owned a bar near Ponte Vittorio, located between the Vatican and the music school. He said that he wanted to relieve a friend, who works for Avon, of any responsibility. He went on to claim, "I heard your daughter talking in my bar. She calls herself Barbarella, sells products from Avon, says she wants to be alone for a while because she is tired of dull and monotonous family life, but in September she will return for her sister's wedding." Emanuela's uncle Mario Meneguzzi asked how tall the girl was, wanting validation that it was indeed his niece. He said that he heard a hesitant voice answer, "A meter and 50?" Though he clearly also distinguished another voice in the background saying, "No, depuis," meaning no, more. For some reason, this call is cited as having been made on the 28th, but the documents of the public prosecutor's office about the matter were created on the 27th. On both days, severe flooding was reported in the areas. Peculiarly, on the 29th of June, a 22-year-old woman named Pasqua Vulpio attempted to jump into the River Tiber from Ponte Sisto. She was rescued, and we will discuss her in more detail later. And all of this in just 1 week. On the 30th of June, 3,000 missing posters of Emanuela were plastered throughout Rome. On Sunday, the 3rd of July, then Pope John Paul II presided over the Angelus, which is a Catholic devotion commemorating the Incarnation or the conception of Jesus Christ in flesh and blood in the womb of the Virgin Mary. There, in St. Peter's Square, he appealed to those responsible for Emanuela's disappearance, stating that, "I am close to the Orlandi family. I deliver my prayer to the Lord so that Emanuela can return home soon, unharmed, and embrace the loved ones who await her with indescribable pain." He went on to speak about her at least 8 times, which prompted speculation of a kidnapping and may have laid the groundwork for subsequent suspicion against the Vatican. Frustratingly, from this point, a sinister series of events was set in motion. The allegations that unfolded took the attention away from Emanuela, effectively relegating her disappearance to the darkness. She became a footnote in her own story as a fight between Vatican and fascists would play out across the front pages. 2 days later, the Orlandi family received an anonymous telephone call advising that their daughter was allegedly a prisoner of a terrorist group, demanding the release of the Turkish man who had shot the Pope in May of 1981. This was the first of what would become many anonymous phone calls linking Emanuela to the group associated with the attempted assassination of the Pope 2 years prior. Days later, still more calls were received, including one from a male identified as the American due to his accent. He played a recording of Emanuela's voice to the Orlandi family before contacting the Vatican to suggest an exchange of Emanuela for the Pope's would-be assassin. The mail mentioned that Pierluigi and Mario were also members of the organisation. On the 6th of July, a young male with an American accent contacted the ANSA, or Associated Press National Agency, which is a non-profit organisation and the leading news agency in Italy. The male informed them that they had spoken with the Vatican, despite denials by the same. He told of the exchange proposition, demanding the Pope's participation by the 20th of July. He further advised that proof of his claims to have Emanuela could be found in a basket in a rubbish bin in the Parliament public square. This would be the first of many communications between the male and ANSA. It was alleged that the editor did indeed find the items, which consisted of a photocopy of Emanuela's music school ID, a receipt for an exam fee, the Orlandi family's telephone number, and a note allegedly handwritten by Emanuela saying, "With great affection, your Emanuela." It was never actually confirmed that these items had been located. However, though the magistrate who presided over Emanuela's case did not believe that there was a credible connection between the girl's abduction and the Pope's harassment. By now, just 2 weeks had passed since Emanuela's disappearance. July 8th, an unknown person with an accent called Emanuela's classmate, Laura Casagrande, instructing her to deliver a message to ANSA. In part, the message was, "We have taken Emanuela because she belongs to the Vatican state." Vatican officials and investigators of the Italian Republic discredit the true nature of the demand, reducing the time available for our negotiations. "We are not a revolutionary or terrorist organisation. We have never described ourselves as such." The deadline was reiterated and the demand confirmed. He also was said to have asked for a direct line with Agostino Casaroli, Secretary of State. His wish was granted, with the line being installed on the 18th of July. In total, 16 calls were made by the American from different public telephone booths. The same day, said Turkish prisoner is practically paraded in front of countless media representatives and distances himself from the act, stating, "I am against this criminal action." He also implicated Sergei Antonov, a Bulgarian Balkan Airlines representative who was based in Rome, and the KGB as responsible for the attempt on the Pope's life. On the 10th of July, editors of the Italian newspaper Paesera received 3 calls from an individual who says, "The organisation is not interested in a ransom, only the liberation of the prisoner, and that a note written by Emanuela to her parents can be found in the airport chapel." Indeed, when searched, the altar did have a photograph believed to have come from the reverse side of her music school ID card. On it was written the message, "Dear Mama and Papa, don't worry about me, I'm all right." It was never established who wrote the note. On the 12th of July, the woman mentioned earlier having jumped off Ponte Sisto spoke with investigators after calling the Orlandi family, explaining that she believed she had recognised Emanuela whilst at the San Filippo Nero hospital in Rome. The lead, as with all others, led nowhere. A few days later, on the 14th of July, another of Emanuela's friends, a girl called Carla de Blasio, was telephoned and instructed to deliver another message to ANSA News. The message was, "In St. Peter's Square toward the Angelus window, we are leaving a tape, addressed to certain technicians who have considered the first one false." Carla's mother acquiesces and passes the information to ANSA, though journalists would not recover the tape in the square. It is not known to what extent the square was searched. More days pass by, more calls are received, more of the same. A tape was eventually found, which contains a chilling clip which appears to depict a female in great distress, with at least 3 tormentors who are to this day unidentified. The tape would not be made public for over 2 decades. A partial audio recording is available online. I have chosen not to include it in this video for reasons I might discuss later on. The Orlandi family, in particular Emanuela's uncle, identifies the voice of Emanuela. Significantly, the Italian intelligence service suggests, in reference to the female, that, quote, they seem to reveal a genuine and severe amount of pain, extremely believable in their expression. Thank you to the Reddit user who translated the original official document. Various reminders of the upcoming deadline are communicated through a variety of sources until, finally, the alleged date of the deadline appears. 4 weeks have passed since the disappearance of Emanuela. On July 20th, at the Pope's general audience, he recites the Ave Maria prayer in Latin for Emanuela, followed by a violinist who plays Schubert's Ave Maria. The 21st of July, 2 identical unsigned letters written in German arrive at both Anza and Il Messaggero from Frankfurt, postmarked the 17th of July. They demand the release of more than just the Turkish prisoner, including Serdar Celebi, who was apparently the president of the Turkish ultra-nationalist group based in Frankfurt, known as the racist, xenophobic and neo-fascist Grey Wolves. On the 22nd of July, Emanuela's uncle directs that all future activity and statements regarding the case be made via the lawyer Gennaro Egidio, an expert in financial and international law. The question of Egidio's appointment would, a decade later, become an enigma of its own. Colwood explained that he had been recommended by Secret Service agent Gianfranco Gramendola, and that the question of his finances had been prearranged, with the Orlandi family never paid him a single lira. Egidio himself would eventually become a controversial character. On the 27th of July, following another general audience, Pope John Paul II invited the faithful to pray for Emanuela. Cole recalled, that same day the Holy Father embraced us, began to cry and told us that our daughter had been kidnapped by an international terrorist organisation. But, he stipulated, contrary to what is often said in the newspapers, he did not mention the KGB. The following month, the 4th of August, the ANSA office in Milan received a report, allegedly from Frente Turks, in poor Italian, threatening that Emanuela would be executed on October the 30th if the Turkish prisoner was not freed. Turkish authorities in Ankara and the Turkish embassy in Rome denied knowledge of the group. Certain details are provided as proof that they had the girl, though Emanuela's mother Maria responded to all of the points, mostly disputing them. The following days and weeks, more reports would come into ANSA from the Frente Turks proclaiming the same thing. Pope John Paul II prays again for Emanuela Orlandi on the 28th of August, as well as for Mirella Gregori, another 15-year-old Italian girl who had disappeared on the 7th of May from Rome just 40 days before Emanuela. As always, said the Pope, I pray for the person who was my attacker. On the 1st of September, another letter arrived again at the Milan ANSA office, sent from the organisation of the Grey Wolves in Alton, Switzerland. The author was marked GFBTB, and the letter was determined to have been written clearly by a Turkish-speaking person. Those who have kidnapped Emanuela are of the cultural Turkish organisation in Switzerland. The kidnapping was planned by the president of the same organisation. The attack on the Pope was also carried out by them. In my opinion, Emanuela too could be in Switzerland, it said. Sunday, the 4th of September, 2 pages are found in a television crew van at Castel Gandolfo, which alleged that the Vatican is distorting information and is, in fact, in tandem with Italian officials, behind the messages from Frente Turks. That same day, the American calls the ANSA office advising that a message has been left in a yellow bag inside a rubbish bin on Porta Angelica Street containing a tape recording amongst other items. The tape is said to refute the writings of the Frente Turks and advises that their operation has finished. They've told me to tell you that in the area of St. Francesca Romana Basilica, the pontiff celebrates the Way of the Cross. This was taken to mean that Emanuela's body or evidence of her fate would be found there. The area is searched, but nothing is found. On the 8th of September, The mother of missing 15-year-old Morella Grigori received a letter requesting the intervention of the President of the Republic, Sandro Pertini. 4 days later, an individual with a foreign accent calls the Grigori's bar, insisting on the same. It is unknown whether the same individual or group are responsible for the communications in both girls' cases. Towards the end of September, more calls are made to Anza, bearing a signature of Phoenix. A warning to Pierluigi and Mario could be found at the church on Regina Margherita Street, as one of them had committed the mistake of bragging about taking part in the move with the aid of a personal lady friend, allegedly. A further letter would go on to state, Pierluigi, it's very dangerous to be in that restaurant with your back to the door. An old friend of ours has met an ugly end before a dish of spaghetti. We generously want to remind Mario that in the pine grove there is plenty of space to ferment the vegetation. The lady friend who you have betrayed can atone for her own sins, because a confession today is better than a death tomorrow. To every element implicated, it is useful to remind them that they can be located wherever they are. It is signed Order NYADC. Phoenix was a city associated with the Italian-American Mafia. On the 4th of October, experts revealed that at least some of the letters are authentic, having been written by the same hand. A subsequent letter would reveal that decisions taken by the Phoenix Council are irrevocable and their patience had reached their limit. By now, Gennaro Egidio has been hired also by the Grigori family, given the similarities between Morella and Emanuela's cases. A reward of 2 million lira is offered for the safe return of both girls. It is never claimed. On the 20th of October, President Pertini states, I have always maintained an extremely firm line in the fight against terrorism, against all negotiation or concession. Today, I send an invitation to the kidnappers to release immediately these girls, and I formulate the wish that a ray of mercy illuminate their spirits. On the 22nd of October, the Grigori and Orlandi families, through their lawyer Egidio, request the cessation of all media related to the disappearances. On the 13th of November, it is rumoured that the Phoenix has assassinated Emanuela. It is unknown where this information specifically came from. On a report dated the 14th of November 1983, the messages regarding Emanuela's disappearance that were received between the 5th of July and the 24th of October were analysed. In total, there were 34 messages. 6 are classified as certainly fraudulent. The attribution of a further 4 cannot be ascertained. 4 are signed by Frente Turks and 4 by Phoenix. The remaining 16 come most probably from the group that carried out and directly managed the kidnapping, or rather managed to get in contact with those truly responsible for the disappearance. From the analysis, the subject profile of the alleged kidnapper or kidnappers is drawn up. Most certainly, they are the work of a single mind, foreigner, very possibly of Anglo-Saxon culture, high intellectual and cultural level, familiar with the Latin tongue, and it follows of Italian. Member, or at least in close contact with, the ecclesiastical world, serious, ironic, precise, and orderly in composure, cold, calculating, full of himself, sure of his role and strength, sexually amorphous, has lived for a long period in Rome, knows very well all the city zones that have something to do with his activity, well informed about Italian judicial rules, and above all, the rules and logistical structure of the Vatican. Sadly, the report would only be released 12 years later, and it is therefore assumed that anybody who knew somebody who matched this description was unaware of their significance. On the 27th of December of 1983, Pope John Paul II visits the Turkish prisoner responsible for wounding him 2 years prior. Quote, "What we talked about is a secret between him and me." The investigation had, until this point, maintained momentum, sadly diminishing until it fell into the realm of the forgotten, largely lost to time. There were, however, key events that occurred in the years post-disappearance. On the morning of the 14th of May 2001, a parish priest near the Vatican found a bag with an image of Padre Pio in a confessional box in the Gregory VII Church. Padre Pio was a priest known to experience stigmata and who was canonized the following year in 2002 by Pope John Paul II. The bag contained a small human skull minus its jawbone. It has not been officially identified. Sadly, in 2004, 1 month after giving his last interview, Emanuela Orlandi passed away without knowing what had happened to his daughter. In 2005, an anonymous individual called an Italian television program claiming that Emanuela had been kidnapped for the Vicar of Rome, Cardinal Ugo Poletti. It was claimed that the secret to the mystery lies in a tomb in Santa Apollinare Basilica, and that whomever wanted to find the truth should seek who was buried within it. Inside the tomb was a crypt encasing an Italian criminal who perished in 1990 at the hands of his criminal associates. His resting place has long been considered inappropriate, given his life of crime, which prompted an investigation in 2009 by the Roman Prosecutor's Office. According to an ex-criminal connection in 2011, the location was chosen as a reward for deterring his associates from criminality against the Vatican, which some take to include the kidnapping of Emanuela. The tip was given added weight when the former girlfriend of the aforementioned criminal suggested that he would have orchestrated the disappearance, then being the local mafia boss. She then explained that Emanuela had been murdered by an organised criminal group on the orders of Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, who died in 2006. He had been linked to financial criminality with the controversial Banco Ambrosiano scandal, the Vatican Bank. The Vatican strongly protested these claims, with Father Federico Lombardi, a spokesman of the Holy See, alleging a lack of humanity and respect for the Orlandi family, which revives their pain. Whilst the woman did mention the dark BMW, it was by this time information long held in the public domain. In August of 2008, however, it will be reported that said BMW was located and indeed linked to some of the people she had named, though by this time most were deceased and no evidence was found to link Emanuela to the vehicle. The woman also went on to make more unsubstantiated claims, including that she had information on the murder of 11-year-old Domenico Nicitra in June of 1993. Her information was contradictory and inconsistent, and as such, her claims cannot be verified. In 2007, on the Good Friday sermon in St. Peter's Basilica on the 6th of April, Reverend Raniero Cantalamessa advised the congregation to make amends for sins before time ran out. Quote, "Don't carry your sins to the grave with you." This fueled the fire of speculation, even further that somebody at the Vatican had information about Emanuela. The Vatican spokesperson, Reverend Federico Lombardi, issued a statement that detailed the Vatican's cooperation throughout the investigation over the years. After almost 3 decades imprisoned between Italy and Turkey, the Turkish prisoner who had shot the Pope in 1981 was released with a full pardon in 2010. In May 2012, the tomb of the criminal located in Santa Apollinare Basilica from the 2005 tip was finally excavated. The body was well preserved, fingerprints were taken to confirm his identity, though forensic analysis showed that the bones long predated Emanuela's disappearance, and so the following month the corpse was cremated and the ashes scattered into the sea. On the 10th of April 2013, Cardinal of the Catholic Church Lorenzo Antonetti passed away. He was known to hold many esteemed positions in the Vatican diplomatic service. He was believed to have authored a 5-page document which was later supposedly stolen, amongst others, from inside a locked cabinet in a Vatican office on the 29th of March 2014. Subsequently published by an Italian investigative journalist, the Vatican claimed the document was false and has repeatedly maintained that it has cooperated fully with police in the Orlandi investigation. The document, allegedly entitled "A Summary of Expenses Sustained by Vatican City State for the Activities Relating to Citizen Emanuela Orlandi." It was purported to be an expense ledger, naming 2 archbishops and subsequent cardinals for the upkeep and movement of Emanuela. It is effectively a running tab of supposed expenses used for Emanuela's upkeep post-disappearance, including charges incurred between 1983 and 1997 for a total of 483 million lira, which would be a significantly higher amount today, hundreds of thousands of euros or dollars. The theory suggests that she was abducted or found by Vatican officials who, for an unknown reason, instead of returning her to her family, they kept her. The itemised costs included transfers, room and board, and medical expenses, including for a gynecologist. Certainly a very strange thing to be needed by a Roman Catholic priest. It is clear that she wasn't able to move freely, Mr. Orlandi said in a phone interview. Should the document be real, it is very serious because it implicates the Vatican in a kidnapping. He called on the Vatican to collaborate in a fresh investigation. You can't close a case when new documents emerge after 34 years that still hope to be verified, he said. The Orlandi's lawyer had previously requested to see the documents pertaining to the kidnapping and to meet with Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State. But she advises that she had heard nothing and that she hadn't received one piece of paper. In October of 2018, adding further fuel to the fire, human remains were found by workers during restoration work on a building near to the diplomatic office of the Vatican. The area is described as an annex where the caretaker used to live. There was an almost complete skeleton, including a pelvis and part of a skull, and separate smaller bone fragments nearby. By now, the Orlandi family lawyer had changed from Egidio to Laura Sugro, who called for DNA analysis to be conducted on the bones and an explanation from the Vatican, whose statement at the time was thin to say the least. The families of both Mirella and Emanuela did hope for answers, though they would clearly have been of a tragic nature. Later test results showed they were the remains of a male who had died at about 200 AD. The following year, in July of 2019, an anonymous photograph was sent to the Orlandi family depicting a stone or marble statue above a royal tomb in the cemetery of the Pontifical Teutonic College, typically reserved for religious figures of Germanic origin. With it was a note advising them to look where the angel is pointing. Many believed that this Da Vinci-style clue would reveal the burial locations of Emanuela and Mirella. Side by side, the tombs belonged to two 19th century Germanic princesses, Princess Sophie Marie Franziska Antonia Ignatia Alberta von Hohenberg, Waldenberg Bartenstein, or just plain old Sophie. She was the only daughter of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria and his wife, whose assassinations triggered the First World War in 1914, catapulting her into the category of First Orphan of the First War, and Duchess Charlotte Frederica of Mecklenburg-Schwerin. Duchess Charlotte was a hereditary princess of Denmark who had relocated to Rome. Bizarrely, the tombs turned out to be lacking not just Emanuela and Mirella's remains, but also those of the princesses. The family's lawyer, Laura Sugro, said, "Our interest is to actively cooperate with Vatican prosecutors to understand better how those two tombs could have been empty. If we understand together, it's better." There was now another piece missing from the puzzle. Where were the princesses? The Vatican attempted to explain away the missing royal remains by suggesting that they may have been displaced during structural work carried out at the college and cemetery since the 1800s. However, in yet another by now either unbelievable or perhaps even expected turn of events, during searches prompted by the empty vaults, Vatican spokesperson Alessandro Gisotti advised that investigators had located two ossuaries, or sets of bones, under a stone slab manhole covering just meters from the royal graves. There is much speculation as to the number of bones found, with the Vatican maintaining it as two sets, though other sources, potentially exaggerated, will claim that dubiously located in the underground cavernous crypt were dozens of boxes containing thousands of unidentified human bones. The bones were found in two holes that had been carved out of a large stone, which was, in turn, covered by an old pavement stone, further stimulating speculation. As of the 20th of July 2019, the results had not yet been released on the remains. There are countless theories relating to Emanuela's disappearance. We are only going to comment on the most prevalent ones and not in any extreme detail, simply because there is so much information available. For anybody wanting to do their own research in the case, there is an astonishing amount of material to sink your teeth into. The first theory is that Emanuela was kidnapped by the Grey Wolves organisation. The Turkish prisoner who had shot the Pope, despite proclaiming his innocence on the matter, gave an interview to RAI Italy television from prison, where he said that Emanuela was alive, safe, and living in a convent. He continued to deny any direct involvement, but stated that he had made logical deductions in the question of her fate. In 2006, however, he also claimed that Mirella Gregori was abducted along with Emanuela to secure his release from prison. He said that the girls were taken to a royal palace in Liechtenstein. On the 9th of November 2010, he was interviewed by state television in Turkey, where he claimed that Emanuela was kept as a prisoner by the Vatican and later was living in a Central European country as a nun in a Catholic monastery. He claimed that the Orlandi family could see her at any time, but that she couldn't leave the monastery. Judge Ferdinando Imposimato, an Italian magistrate and the honorary president of the Supreme Court of Italy, joined the debate in the year 2000. He declared that he believed Emanuela was living a perfectly integrated life in the Muslim community, further noting that she had probably lived for a long time in Paris. Conversely, Magistrate Adele Randau believed that this theory had in fact in actuality been a clever operation to dissimulate the true motive of the Orlandi kidnapping, a motive probably destined to remain secret. The second theory revolves around organised crime and potential links to the Italian-American mafia. There are many alleged links between Emanuela's disappearance and the Banda della Magliana, an Italian criminal organisation. The tomb that was excavated in 2012 was of one of the associates of the group. Additionally, in 2011, another former member implied that the faction had been responsible for taking Emanuela as part of a series of strikes against the Vatican. The aim was to recoup large amounts of money that had been loaned and subsequently lost with the collapse of the Banco Ambrosiano, the Vatican bank. There were also anonymous tips called in suggesting variations of this theory, though none have been substantiated. One of the most controversial theories is that the Vatican was indeed responsible for Emanuela's abduction, with many supporters alleging it was for sexual-related purposes. In May of 2012, Reverend Gabriel Amorth, the Vatican's exorcist-in-chief, claimed that a Vatican police officer had kidnapped Emanuela, specifically for depraved sex parties, before she was murdered and disposed of. He also alleged that foreign embassy officials were also involved. This was a crime with a sexual motive. Parties were organised, with a Vatican gendarme acting as the recruiter of the girls. He continued, the network involved diplomatic personnel from a foreign embassy to the Holy See. Finally concluding, I believe Emanuela ended up as a victim of this circle. The theory was sensationalised by journalist Pino Nicotri, who wrote a book about it which claims that certain priests confused investigators by sending in endless tips. Contrarily, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re said, if anyone on the inside had known anything, he would have said it. We were all interested in clearing the case up. This theory does, however, hold some weight with the Orlandi family, with Pietro, Emanuela's brother and biggest advocate, stating, I don't know about the theories, but I do say this, the behaviour of the Vatican over the years has been one of secrecy and lack of collaboration, and it has made me think there are leaders within the Vatican who know what happened. Continuing, from John Paul II to Ratzinger and Francis, they all know what happened. But due to this being so damaging to the image of the Church, they've been doing all they can to ensure that the truth doesn't come out. Additionally, the Pope has been said to have told the Orlandis, when they approached him for assistance, that Emanuela was in heaven. Did he know more than he was letting on? Or was this simply a turn of phrase intended to bring comfort to a grieving family? And what of the supposed expense ledger that was allegedly stolen from the Vatican? We must also consider the issues with the burial and movement of remains under the Vatican's control. I've never known a case uncover such inconsistencies and literally grave problems. How many sets of remains were uncovered or found to be missing in the search for the girls? Whilst many consider the exhumations acts of admission, the Vatican was staunch in its response. The decision to open both tombs in the presence of an expert appointed by Emanuela's family, working according to the most advanced technical standards, is a sign of particular attention and human and Christian closeness to the Orlandi family. It is certainly not, as has been said, an admission by the Vatican of possible involvement in the concealment of a corpse. Intriguingly, PR consultant Francesca Ciauqui, who was convicted in 2016 of leaking classified Vatican documents to journalists, weighed in on the subject. Quote, "I told Pietro the tombs would be empty. This is my only statement on the matter. I will not add any details until I am released from the pontifical secrecy." Another theory, despicable as it is somewhat less conspiratorial: human trafficking. This theory suggests that Emanuela was indeed abducted, though not necessarily by officials, rather by an individual or small group with no overarching purpose or underlying motive. Put simply, the abduction of a young female is prevalent in all countries, and most of the avenues of thought lead to the same result. There was an unknown male in a green or dark-coloured BMW that was seen engaging with Emanuela the day she disappeared, and the tale she told her family was that she had been propositioned for a job offer. This is a commonly used enticement, and could sadly have also whirled from Mirella Gregori the previous month as well. I'm now going to read part of a debatable and polarising point. I personally mean no offence by it, and I'm simply reading the words of one who has spoken in relation to the theory. Judge Severino Santiapici was an Italian magistrate and writer. He presided over the Pope John Paul II assassination attempt trial, and after retirement, he wrote several non-fiction novels. He doesn't believe the human trafficking or white slavery theory. Quote, "The police told me that Emanuela was taken to Arabia. Anyone who has been a few times in that country knows that it's not necessary to kidnap girls there because there are thousands of them, and splendid besides." Ercole Orlandi believed his daughter had been kidnapped by a powerful organisation, though stopped short of declaring which one, only stating, "We are victims of an obscure matter of state. Our daughter has been kidnapped by an organisation so efficient, so powerful, that it showed no fear of Italian investigators. It's a very complicated tangle." He continued, "The American told us, it's useless to register or attempt to intercept this communication. I can make the call appear in 15 different sites." Allegedly, on one occasion, when partially deciphered, the phone seemed to originate from the United States Embassy. Interestingly, Ercole doesn't exclude the Vatican from his definition of powerful organisations. Some smaller theories include the possibility for an accident. The surrounding area was very, very busy on that particular evening, and there were storms which could have washed away any evidence. Pietro doesn't believe she left of her own accord, stating, "She was so serene. She had something planned with her sister and had music recitals a few days later." And finally, did Pasqua Vulpio, the woman who tried to end her own life, really see Emanuela or know something of the truth? Sadly, we may never know the truth about what happened to Emanuela Orlandi on the evening of Wednesday the 22nd of June, 1983, in Rome. I'm always on the lookout for amazing new resources that will help with finding the missing, or coping until we find them. A while ago, whilst doing some research, I found something which I thought was amazing. The book In the Loop is a children's book produced by the families and friends of missing people in Australia, based on their unique and sometimes shared experiences in coping with ambiguous loss. Reading from the book's introduction. This resource gives a voice to children and young people affected by the loss of a loved one through missing. It reflects their thoughts and experiences. Young people have told us they want to be kept in the loop. In the Loop is a resource for young people and those who care for them. This book is written by and for children and young people who live with having someone missing in their lives. Young people tell us that they feel the missing of their loved one in every aspect of their lives. It can affect the way they relate to others, the here and now, their view of what the future holds. They express the belief that missing affects how others relate to them too. Most of the words, pictures, and photos are theirs, and they have entrusted them to the team in the hope that their insights and shared experiences will be helpful for others who live with or are touched by missing. Copies can be obtained from details which I will provide in the description box. Please share this resource with anybody who you feel may benefit from it. I'd like to thank the team and contributors for making this wonderful project possible. I'm going to leave you now with a repeat of Emanuela's description and a few words from her remaining family. At the time of her disappearance, Emanuela was described as a 15-year-old Italian female, between 150 to 160 centimetres or 4'11" to 5'3" tall, with long, straight, dark hair and brown eyes. She has a slim build and was last seen wearing gym shoes or trainers, jeans with suspender braces and a white shirt or blouse. She had a yellow and red fabric necklace on and was carrying a brown leather bag which contained her flute in a black rectangular case. The bag also contained some sheet music, her school enrollment card and her public transport card. If seen today, Emanuela would be 42 years old. The family have had their hopes built up and torn down again and again over the years. Of all the dashed hopes, her older brother Pietro has been steadfast in his pursuit of the truth and maintains, even if nothing is to be found, it cannot be the end of the story. She was trying to teach me a Chopin piece. We only got through 2 pages and then she went missing. I hope one day she comes back to teach me the rest. Tragically, he blames himself on the bad days, remembering their last interaction. It's a very painful memory. She insisted I'd take her, and we rowed over it. Then she left, slamming the door. I never thought it would be the last time I saw her. I'm sure there are many siblings out there, myself included, that have had typical arguments over petty things, but none of us expect that it will be the last time we see each other. He remembered. I've gone over it so many times, telling myself if only I'd have accompanied her, maybe it wouldn't have happened. Through it all, however, he perseveres. I am incapable of accepting injustices, but especially when it involves my sister, knowing that over all these years there are people who know what happened. For me, the right to the truth and the right to justice are sacred rights that nobody can ever take away. But if Emanuela is dead and buried, it's right that what has been hidden for so many years comes to light. In 2003, her father Ercole said, "In all these years, my wife and I have never lost the hope of being able to embrace her again. Because Emanuela is alive. Somewhere." Tragically, Ercole would pass away without that final embrace. Speaking of his ailing mother, Pietro confirms, "She has every faith in all I'm doing. She prays for me as she believes I will find out what happened to Emanuela, where she is, or if she's dead, and if so, where her body is. Until we find her remains, we must never stop hoping she is still alive." Many people tell me, "Just let it go, enjoy your life. Don't think about it anymore," Pietro said. But I can't let go. I couldn't be at peace if this is not solved. And finally, although this case is Emanuela's, we must not forget young Mirella Gregori, whose case often frustratingly falls by the wayside, paling in comparison. The girls are not to be compared with each other or anybody else and are of equal value and worth, each having family and friends who love and miss them, each deserving of answers and justice. On this note, I'd like to give some brief details and circumstances of Mirella's disappearance and a few final words from her sister Maria Antonetta Gregori. Mirella disappeared on the 7th of May 1983 from her home in Rome. Her mother says Mirella answered the intercom at the family apartment before telling her parents it was a school friend with whom she had a date. She never returned. At the time of her disappearance, Mirella Gregori was described as a 15-year-old Italian female, 160 centimetres or 5'3" tall, with long dark hair and brown eyes. She has a slim build. If seen today, Mirella would be 42 years old. His sister Maria says, "I don't want to delude myself. I want to keep my feet on the ground, but in my heart, I hope we can put an end to this story and have a place to weep and take a flower to my sister." So if you have any information relating to the disappearances of Emanuela Orlandi or Morella Gregori, please use the contact information in the description box to get it to those who can act on it. So thank you very much for spending some time with me here today and to hear a little bit more about Emanuela and Morella. I apologise, it's been a very, very long one, but I'm very appreciative and grateful for all of your support. I hope you're all staying well and healthy. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!